believing it's politically motivated. White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre said,
"The president has reached out around Hurricane Helene. He reached out. It is up to the governor. It is really up to the governor. We know, I can say, and I think you've heard this from the FEMA administrator. She has been able to speak with the governor.
There have been ceremonies today around the country marking a year since the October 7th attack in Israel. Former President Trump visited a Jewish cultural site in his native Queens, New York. Abortion expected to be a major issue in next month's election. Today, the Supreme Court decided it's not going to intervene in Texas. ABC's Stephen Portnoy explains from Washington.
On the first day of its new term, the Supreme Court turned down a Biden administration challenge to Texas's abortion ban. The administration had argued that the Texas ban conflicts with federal law requiring emergency rooms to provide patients with stabilizing care. Texas says its law allows for abortions to prevent substantial impairment of a major bodily function. The court dodged the emergency room question last term when it declined to reach a ruling on the merits after examining Idaho's abortion ban.
All three major financial markets down sharply today. You're listening to ABC News.
Finally, I love fall again. What's that? Was there a time I didn't? Yeah, all those years I watched the leaves fall knowing they'd soon turn to muck and clog my gutters. But since I discovered Leaf Filter, I haven't had to get on a ladder once. And colorful falling leaves are again a welcome sight. You can have that happiness again too. The Leaf Filter's award-winning patented technology leaves no openings for debris. Nothing gets through but water. Gutters stay clean and efficient with zero effort. And every installation comes with free inspection, estimate, and lifetime guarantee. Plus, your Leaf Filter Trusted Pro will clean out, realign, and seal your gutters before installing Leaf Filter. Now, DIY might seem tempting till you're replacing or repairing it, so get it right from go. Protect your home and never clean out gutters again with Leaf Filter, America's #1 gutter protection system. Schedule your free inspection and get up to 30% off your entire purchase at leaffilter.com/listen. A free inspection and up to 30% off at leaffilter.com/listen. See representative for warranty details. Promotion is 20% off plus a 10% senior or military discount. 1 discount per household.
Back to the bargaining table for Boeing and the union that represents thousands of striking machinists. Last month, the union rejected what Boeing called its best and final offer. Today's meeting, the third between the two sides. Two-time Grammy Award-winning singer Cissy Houston, the mother of the late superstar Whitney Houston, has died at 91. Her family says she died in her New Jersey home where she was under hospice care being treated for Alzheimer's disease. Two Americans sentenced to prison in Russia.
Doesn't matter if you're 72, Stephen Hubbard sentenced to nearly 7 years behind bars for allegedly fighting as a mercenary in Ukraine. Prosecutors say he signed a contract with the Ukrainian military after Moscow sent troops into Ukraine in February 2022, and he fought alongside them until being captured 2 months later. Meanwhile, another American, Robert Gilman, sentenced to just over 7 years for allegedly assaulting law enforcement officers while serving another sentence. Tom Rivers, ABC News at the Foreign Desk.
Federal health officials say they're providing $72 million to vaccine manufacturers to help ensure that currently available bird flu vaccines are ready to use if they're needed. Health officials stress this is being done out of an abundance of caution. There are currently no recommendations for anyone in the U.S. to be vaccinated against bird flu. I'm Brian Clark, ABC News.
As the chilly winds approach, is your garden ready to weather the winter? Join us at the Well-Dressed Winter Garden class, where you'll learn how to wrap your garden in style. On Sunday, October 13th at 1 p.m., come down to Airport Garden Center for a free class that blends evergreens, art, and a warm coat for your soil. Special guest speaker Tamara Allen will guide you through creating a visually stunning garden, protecting your soil, and prepping your plants for the cold ahead. Plus, all participants get a $10 off coupon for same-day use. Space is limited, so sign up today. Visit airportgarden.biz or call 360-457-8462 to reserve your spot at this free event. The Well-Dressed Winter Garden class, Sunday, October 13th, 1 p.m. at Airport Garden Center on Edgewood Drive. Your garden will thank you.
Here's your Newsradio KONP forecast, brought to you by Olympic Game Farm. Cloudy skies with a few peaks of sun this afternoon, with daytime highs approaching 63. North winds around 5 miles per hour. Chance for isolated rain showers tonight. Lows level off around 51. Cloudy skies. Isolated rain showers likely tomorrow. Daytime highs approaching 61, cloudy skies. High temperatures reach up to 57 Wednesday with isolated rain showers likely. 55, sunshine mixed with clouds at times Thursday. Looking at the long range, 57 Friday, 61 Saturday, and 62 on Sunday. That's a look at your forecast. I'm meteorologist Paul Trombley. Currently, it's 49 degrees.
It's the Todd Ortloff Show on Newsradio KONP. Now, here's Todd.
And welcome once again to the show. Lots to cover today. In our first segment, our good friend Keith Ross rejoins us. We've talked with Keith in the past about all of the great things he's doing with photography, eaglets, publishing, stuffed animals. He's doing a little of everything. It's been interesting to watch his business really just kind of unfold or take off. Should I say it like that? Since he does so many birds, right?
Yeah, and it just keeps on taking off.
Anyway, Keith joins us in the studio. It's great to see you again. Thanks for stopping by.
Hey, thanks for having me on again.
Time for a little update. Let's get an update first about what a lot of folks have been following, your book and the stuffed animals, and the story of the eaglets, which is now a number of years old actually, but it continues to have a life of its own.
Yeah, writing the book and getting all the pictures was a relatively easy part. It was last year I finally got it published, and was on here with you back then when that first happened. So it's been exciting. It's been a huge, wonderful experience.
Let's roll back to the story and how it all happened. Keith is a nature photographer by heart, but has, and we'll find out, has expanded into a whole lot of other things, including some great photos of us down here. He did our staff photos recently.
Well,
did a great job. But this goes back to a time where literally a couple of baby eagles fell out of a nest, essentially, and you were kind of at the scene, got some pictures. Take it from there, please.
Yeah. So, the pair of eaglets were found alongside a road down on Marine Drive.
In Sequim.
Yep, in Sequim, just kind of due south of the lighthouse there. And I was contacted by Jay Moore to come down and photograph this rescue. And so the eaglets were taken to the vet, brought back, and that's when I hooked up with them down there and took some photographs of them, including some right on the ground, laid my camera lens right down on the ground, took some shots that are still worldwide famous.
They're all over. I mean, we should point out, those photos have been picked up globally.
Yes, yeah. And to this day, since 2019, if you go Google eagles or eaglets and tap on the images, I've got so many images in there. They were the very first and second images. They're still in the top three. So all those pictures have serious staying power.
For two reasons, I think. I mean, they're fabulous pictures. And also, number two, you had the opportunity to get a photo like no one else gets an opportunity to get a photo. Because, if you know how nature works, you're not getting that close to an eaglet normally.
No, you're usually getting headshots.
Yeah.
So to be able to get right down on the ground and personalize them, the expressions, if you can call a bird's face an expression, it sure seemed to be. They're just so darling.
And is a tremendous. So then you put this book together based on this. Tell us just briefly about that. And that's when we last talked to you. You just launched the book, and it has really taken off. And it's now, I guess we'll call you award-winning for that now, too.
It certainly did, yeah. So I wrote the book the winter after it happened. So the event happened in May of 2019. By December of 2019, I had written the book. And then, of course, trying to get a book formatted and published was quite a challenge. So it wasn't until last year that I finally hired somebody to help me put it into Illustrator and get the thing all formatted so it could be put to market. I spent a year getting the plush toys, replica stuffed eaglets made, and all that came together last year. Took it to market, and it was actually Seattle Refined did a feature story on me, and right before Christmas, thank goodness, it was awesome. Sold lots of books from that. Literally right in December is when they did the story, and it just blew up their Facebook. Jen from Seattle Refined contacted me while the story was running on their Facebook page, and she goes, "This thing has taken on a life of its own." And then the fun part was a few weeks later, they announced the top 5 stories for Seattle Refined for 2023, and I was number 2, only behind Taylor Swift.
Okay.
So if I got to lose to somebody,
yeah, I guess,
I'll give her that
beat
one.
her that, especially 2023, right?
Exactly.
Like a little popular in Seattle during that summer for certain. Certainly has been a great run, and I don't know. I mean, we talked last time about this multimedia approach to things. I don't think you really intended for to kind of get into that, but it just sort of happened and happened well for you.
Oh yeah. And then shortly after all that happened, the Bookhouse Publishing, Melissa had told me about an award contest called the Next Generation Indie Book Awards. It's like the biggest independent author book award contest out there. So it's a big global thing. And so I went ahead and entered in 3 categories. I entered in gifts, children's, juvenile, nonfiction, and then one other, it slips my mind right now. But anyway, so I entered in 3 divisions. I thought, well, even if I get noticed, I'll be happy, right? And so time went by, and I got an email one day, and I look at it, and it says, now that you're a winner, what's next? I'm like, what?
What do you mean by that?
I know. And it was just kind of like all the next steps. I'm like, did I miss an email? So I go back 2 weeks, and I look, and I got the award, or I actually won first prize in gifts and was a finalist in children's juvenile nonfiction. I was like, what?
And this is from a guy you've never written a book before,
No,
right? I mean,
no.
this is the beauty of this story, is that all of it just has all just happened.
Out of my element.
Yeah.
Well, photographer, apparently now author.
Well, it is an incredible story, and you did turn it into a juvenile story, a kind of a kid's approach, but adults like it too. It's a good book, and the illustrations are wonderful, and it goes well with your photos. I mean, it's a package deal, Keith.
Oh, it
really is. Yeah, and
so,
you did a good job with putting it together.
Well, thank you. And since I didn't really quite finish the story for people that aren't aware of how this whole thing went, so the short version is, they were found on the side of the road, taken to the vet, checked out, and then Casey Balch from Pacific Northwest Tree Service came down and climbed up in the tree, and the eaglets were checked out and put into a duffel bag and long line back up into the tree with mom and dad circling overhead, and were placed back with the adults, and were having crab dinner that night.
Yeah.
And ultimately did fledge and lived happily ever after.
That's great. Were you able to follow them for a bit then, those little eaglets? I mean, how long were they hanging around still after you saw them?
For quite a while.
Yeah.
After I took those pictures, that place was inundated with photographers,
sure, yeah.
as you can imagine. If you go down there now, there's a couple of concrete benches that the people that own the property adjacent to the nest actually put in for people to sit in while they're sitting and watching the eagles.
Of course.
It became a destination, right?
Who would have thunk? I mean, and I know when the day kind of unfolded and you showed up and took these pictures, you're just thinking, opportunity for some photos. And I don't think you really realized what was going to come after that.
No, I probably would have done things a little bit differently had I known I was going to be writing a book. But it was pretty exciting. So fortunately, Chris had her cell phone out and did some video, and ended up creating a video with still pictures, and it's on my website at keithsframeofmind.com. If you go on there and click onto the eaglet page and go under the order and info, there's an actual video in there. You can watch the whole rescue. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I've seen the video, actually, and it is pretty cool. And the book is still available. You can order it. And I suggest, even if you don't have any kids around, get it for yourself.
Oh, yeah. It's a wonderful book. And I'm actually selling the eaglets and the books separately. Originally, I was only selling them as a set.
Yep.
The literary agent from Next Generation Indie Book Awards, as being a winner, they kind of give you some advice, especially for a rookie like me. And she suggested I make them available individually like that.
The eaglets are cool, too. The plush toys are pretty nice.
But I do want to tell you a story. One of the best things that happened this year was Nancy LeBlanc teaches second grade for Franklin Elementary. And she asked if I would be up for coming down and talking to her class. And of course I agreed. So the week before I went down there, they all were studying eaglets and were very, very excited about me coming down there. And so I walked into the classroom, and all the kids had little flyers that they'd printed out with my picture on it, and they all wanted autographs. I'm like, all right, celebrity status, right? Yeah. very, very cute. They were so excited that I was there. So I played that whole eaglet rescue video for them, and then I created a slideshow with 240 bird pictures, and we called it Name That Bird, and it was the most fun ever.
I bet.
So I put up a picture of a bird with no name under it. I'd make them all guess, and then I'd flip up the next one to be the same bird, but with the name of the bird underneath it. Just a wonderful time. So we filled up their entire hour with that. They've just had a blast, and man, working with kids at that age was so fun. And so after that, I get a call from Nancy, and she said that the kids had made up a poster for me, a thank you poster for coming down and teaching them and spending time with them. So it was very cool. Yeah. So I says, okay, I'd love to come down and accept that. And so I told her, I said, here, I'm going to bring them a surprise too. So we have some coloring books that we'd made up out of my bird pictures, and so I put together a whole box of those. So I walk in the classroom, I'm standing up there talking to all the kids, and they're all very, very excited I was there. And as soon as I stopped talking, one of the kids over in the corner holds up his hands, waving it, and I said, yeah, and he goes, points real quickly, what's in the box? She had tipped him off. So we gave each one of the kids a coloring book, and that's the most heartwarming thing ever, working with kids.
You're a bird educator now. You're going to be an elementary school teacher before we know it.
Yeah. Well, the good part is the second half of that book was a bunch of bullet points I got from Shelley Ament from the Department of Fish and Wildlife.
So it a built-in lesson plan right there.
It really is, yeah. So I'm going to be doing a lot more of that.
Excellent.
I'm going to start volunteering to schools.
I was going to say, I think that's really pretty special for people to actually get to talk to the guy that was involved directly with.
Oh, and it's so rewarding for me. You walk out of there, you just can't help but glow coming out of that. With working with the kids and the excitement and they just want to learn. They're sponges.
Keith is a Renaissance man, to say the least. If you heard our interview a year ago, we talked about he just kind of fell into this photography thing. He has almost a retirement hobby, and it's really just taken off into its own thing. You're not only, you've got bird people. What I tell folks to do, follow him on Facebook, because he posts tons of pictures, great bird pictures in action out there. Go over to your website too. You put a lot of stuff up there. But you're also doing some other things now. I mentioned you're doing portrait photography. You did our staff photos.
Yeah.
So you're doing a little bit more of that sort of thing. And you told me you're doing some product photography now too.
Yeah, I do headshots. I do senior photos. Been doing several of those. I do family photos. I've been photographing artworks, products, sculptures, and things like that. I teach photography, one-on-one classes. I teach editing. I build live edge wood furniture for people.
Yeah. What about then you do that other furniture and framing stuff on the side?
Oh yeah, lots and lots of custom dining tables. Anything out of wood. I've got a whole shipping container full of slabs of wood. People come over. We call it Pick Your Wood, Pick Your Dream, and they come in and pick out what they want, tell me what they want built, and I build it. I do picture printing and framing. I have my own frame shop. So fun part is people come over, get their pictures taken. I can take their pictures. I've got a print shop. I've got a frame shop. And I give them the finished product in a day.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I'm telling you, it's
so
a
fun.
One-stop spot, and it's terrific, really good quality product.
And we have our own gallery there, too. So we're actually going to be part of the Straight from the Artist Tour. So that's going to be coming up November 9th and 10th. If you go online, it's called Straight from the Artist. And there's a whole bunch of artists opening up their galleries and workspaces. We're part of that. This is our third year. So anybody that wants to come over and see the eaglets, see my wildlife gallery downstairs, all my live edge wood stuff, we just open up the entire facility to everybody.
Date again, November
9th and 10th.
Okay.
And then coming up here in town in Port Angeles on December 14th, we're going to be having a table down at the Vern Burton Holiday Sale. And that's on December 14th. December 7th, we'll be at the Squim Prairie Grange with a table down there. You can come down and get a book. I can autograph it for you. And, of course, we'll have the stuffed eaglets there with it as well. And then at Sherwood Village Retirement Home, they're actually doing their very first annual holiday bazaar, and that's November 16th. So I'll be putting all this
you're
stuff
gonna
on
be
my
busy.
face.
You're
I know.
everywhere.
I'm telling you.
Go to your Facebook page. You'll have it all up there, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
My Facebook page is Keith's Frame of Mind Keith's Frame of Mind on Facebook.
It's a great place to go. And, if nothing else, you'll just relax because it's these great nature photos that are incredible. Although it's a little violent lately. You've been doing a lot of Hawks versus Stiller Jays.
Oh,
on
yeah.
there.
It's watching nature at its best.
Yeah, but that's part of it.
Oh,
right?
it is.
Yeah.
It's a blast. Yeah.
Keith, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. Thanks for you're just so busy that we hardly get to stop and chat. So we'll do it again real soon, all right?
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Keith, at Keith's Frame of Mind, he is got a great operation going there. Check it out. And also, book him for an eaglet talk sometime. How about that? All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to talk a little symphony orchestra right after this.
This is the Todd Ortloff Show on Newsradio KONP.
I understand that as our world becomes more automated, receiving personalized service from a real person is more meaningful than ever. I'm Dan Shappy, and as a farmer's agent, I know a thing or two about how to help you select the insurance you want so you can
protect what matters most.
Call 360-681-0696 to learn more and chat with me, a real person and experienced farmer's agent, today.
We are farmers. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
Underwritten by Farmers Truck Fire Insurance Exchanges and Affiliates. Products not available in every state.
Red Carpet Car Wash in Carlsberg is always adding to the list of things they provide to keep your vehicle looking brand new. The full detail shop is just one more service to check off that list. Not only will your interior and exterior shine, your engine will sparkle too. Red Carpet is also getting some winter upgrades, including new equipment in the manual bay and new vacuums. Call Kyle today and let him get you scheduled for your red carpet treatment Tuesday through Saturday. 360-461-0826.
Hi, I'm Kevin Vanderweg, State Senator representing the Olympic Peninsula. This November, I'm asking you to vote for Randy Johnson, Clown County Commissioner. Randy has a history of working with people from all political affiliations. He has ran successful businesses and also advocated for social programs at the county level. Randy is passionate about Clown County. Vote Randy Johnson, Clown County Commissioner.
Paid for by the committee to elect Randy Johnson.
Own a septic system? Have questions about how to take care of your system? Attend Septic 101, a free class put on by Clallam County Environmental Health. Classes provide homeowners with septic system maintenance information and features an industry professional who has first-hand experience in what not to do to your septic system. Class will be held at the Squim Prairie Grange on Thursday, October 10th from 5:30 till 7:30 p.m. Visit clallamcountywa.gov/septic to register or call 417-2258.
All right, welcome back to the program. Yeah, your choice, whatever you want to do there, Maestro. we're gonna switch gears and talk a little bit about the Port Angeles Symphony Orchestra. We have the maestro here. We have the conductor and the artistic director himself, Jonathan Pasternak, joining us. And it seems like it's been, well, for you and me, about a week and a half since we last chatted.
Yeah,
but,
that's right. We had a great time at the family concert, and Todd, you were terrific. You're just amazing for this piece by Robert Rodriguez. Yeah, the Phantom Toll Booth. So thank you again.
I don't get to do that kind of like, voice acting thing much, where I got to do a little bit of more inflection and such. So that was fun.
It's
Appreciate
great.
you asking me.
It's great. It's great.
With that said, the Pops concert, does launch the season.
It does.
So here we go. Now you've got another concert coming up.
That's right. So as you know, and I think many of our listeners do as well, we have a series of 3 chamber concerts, and those are ordinarily chamber orchestra concerts. But it turns out in the fall we're really busy because we go from the family concert to starting with the first symphony concert and then the holiday concert, and we don't have a whole lot of time to put together a chamber orchestra program in the middle of October. So we invite special guests to do chamber recitals, and sometimes we'll do them with our musicians. And I'm just delighted that Matthew Deline is going to be the soloist with his duo partner and his wife, Jennifer Chung, on piano. And Matthew plays violin and viola. He is a virtuoso on both. He's an amazing musician, instrumentalist, just terrific, and they have a very beautiful program planned.
Okay, that's going to be typical. You're doing the Holy Trinity and Sequim United Methodist thing, or
that's exactly it. Yes. Yeah. We hate for people to wander around looking for our venues, so we try for some consistency. And yes, so Friday night at 7 p.m. we'll be at Holy Trinity Lutheran Church in Port Angeles. At the same time, 7 p.m. Saturday, October 12th, Trinity United Methodist Church. We love both of these venues, and we could get so much closer to our patrons that way. It's a wonderful experience.
And it's perfect for chamber, because that's really the way it's intended to be. You're in someone's chamber. That's how these were developed.
That's exactly right, and the name stuck, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So this simply going to be the duo, or is there going to be any accompaniment? They're just doing the whole the whole thing that is them.
Yes. Yeah. They're doing the show, and the last couple of years we also had a piano violin duo that was Elisa Barston from the Seattle Symphony, our dear friend, and Paige Roberts-Malloy, who then soloed with us wonderfully in the Shostakovich concerto last May. But this is new, and Matt grew up in Port Townsend. And he played in the Port Angeles Symphony when he was in high school. I think he started at the age of 13. He won a concerto competition that we had. His teacher was Nico Snell.
Get out.
Yeah, his teacher was Nico Snell, and he won the concerto competition, and he played the Max Bruch violin concerto here. Then he played in the Seattle Youth Orchestra, and eventually he auditioned and he got into Juilliard, and he went to college there and at Yale. And he also has a doctorate in music. And anyway, aside from all those things, you listen to him and you're just captivated. Yeah. He is that kind of fantastic musician.
True virtuoso, really. Yeah. And coming full circle then. I mean, by coming back here, he's back at his old stomping grounds.
Absolutely.
Where it all started, as they say, right?
Absolutely, yeah. He and Jennifer decided to move back to Port Townsend, and they've opened up violin studios, violin, viola, and piano teaching studios, and we're just so lucky to have him in the area.
All right. Give us just a glimpse as to what we'll hear when you go here. Sounds like anything they play is going to be fabulous, but
it will be, and I'm so glad that Matthew has structured this so we get to hear him play violin pieces and viola pieces, and also Jennifer is going to play a solo piece by Franz Liszt, the Valet Dobermann, which I remember in conservatory days we'd call the Doberman. I don't know. We thought it was funny then, and it really isn't. Anyway, so the two violin pieces, he's going to do a Mozart sonata for violin and piano, and then a piece by the African-American composer Florence Price. Not too many people know Florence Price. They should. She was writing in the first half of the 20th century, and she was actually the first African-American composer to kind of make it big in the States as it could be. First, also to have a work performed by a major symphony orchestra in the Chicago Symphony. Her career was mostly in Chicago, and then on the second half, Matthew's going to change to the larger instrument, the viola, and is going to do a piece by Brahms. Which is great because my favorite.
I think Brahms is your guy, right?
Keep it coming. But also by a very interesting Armenian-American composer named Alan Hovhannes, who I think he passed away. I don't know. I think he was maybe 100 or more than 100, and he wrote at least that many symphonies. I mean, really, I think maybe 200. I don't know. He still might be writing symphonies. I don't know. It is that many, and they're so beautiful and very, very folk oriented, but also very spiritual too. And this is a piece I've never heard. I also have never heard the Florence Price, so I can't wait. And the Hovhannes is for solo viola, and that opens the second half before they do the Brahms sonata.
All right, great program. I mean, it's been a little bit of something for everybody.
Exactly.
Like at this.
Yes.
Tickets. How does one acquire one for this for either of those shows?
Yeah.
Or both.
Yeah. Well, tickets are $20, and you could get them on our website, portangelessymphony.org, by calling us at 360-457-5579. You could get them at Port Book and News, and you could get them at the door.
All right. It's always a great concert. The chamber concerts are fun. Yes. Just kind of nice and intimate. And again, that's this Friday and Saturday nights. PA on Friday night, Squim on Saturday night. Go to the Symphony's website for all of the deets, as we like to say.
Exactly. And there's a list of this program, too, if you want to listen to the music before you come.
Okay. Before you go, I have to say congratulations on your 10th year.
Thank you very much.
I didn't get to say this last time we had. And we got busy with talking about the Pops concert, so that was the start of the decade, the magical decade.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's flown by, and this is truly my home now.
Yeah,
and it's great.
Well, I got a chance to interact with your orchestra a bit. I think they kind of like you. By the way, I just want you to know that.
I hope at least a little bit, because they have to see me an awful lot during the season.
Well, I got a chance to see them. What you work with them, and it was refreshing. Normally you don't get a chance to see an actual dress rehearsal, but so just a little hats off to you and the group, the whole group.
Thank you, thank you. I'm so fortunate to be here.
All right. Jonathan, we're going to be talking again very soon, because you got a full symphony coming up pretty soon. When's your next full concert?
Biggie, November 2nd.
Yeah. So, geez, I'll have you back in another couple of weeks probably.
Can't wait.
All right. Jonathan Pasternak from the Symphony here in Port Angeles. We're going to take a break. Be back with more in just a moment.
At Olympic Peninsula Title, we wear a lot of different hats. We're investigators, analysts, and the protectors of property rights. We seek a high standard of accuracy. Our commitment to exceptional service strengthens our mission. We reduce risk. We stay on top of the current issues affecting property rights. We sweat the small stuff to give our customers the peace of mind they deserve. When it's time to choose a title company to close your transaction, opt for Olympic Peninsula Title. Locally owned and family run since 1981.
Hi, this is Tristan with Tri-State Roofing. We are celebrating the grand pre-opening in Squim. We specialize in roofs, siding, gutters, patio covers, and doors. The best part? We got you covered with incredible financing. 0 down payment, 0 payments, and 0 interest for up to 18 months on approved credit. Experience the Tri-State way. We've got you covered 24/7. Call 253-ROOFING or tristate.pro.
Tri-State Roofing, we got you covered.
I understand that as our world becomes more automated, receiving personalized service from a real person is more meaningful than ever. I'm Dan Shappy, and as a farmer's agent, I know a thing or two about how to help you select the insurance you want so you can
protect what matters most.
Call 360-681-0696 to learn more and chat with me, a real person and experienced farmer's agent, today.
We are farmers. Bum, ba-dum, bum, 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 bum.
Underwritten by Farmers Truck Fire Insurance Exchanges and Affiliates. Products not available in every state.
Speaking of music, big music coming up this weekend on Friday night in Port Angeles. Josh Grayson, who's a hit maker in his own right on the country charts, is going to be in Port Angeles for our sister station, the Straight 102's Straight Country Series at Field Hall. If you want to check out Josh Grayson, right here in little old Port Angeles, you're going to have a big-time Nashville artist in town. That's going to be this Friday. Now, we had hoped to chat with Josh in the second part of our program today. However, we got a little bit of a scheduling conflict. We're going to try to get regrouped with him maybe later in the week and get a talk with Josh Grayson a little bit about the show that he and his band are bringing up here to Port Angeles. But suffice to say, tickets are available. Get them while you can at Field Hall's website. And it should be a great show. It's going to be 7:30 on Friday night. We're going to talk a little bit about archaeology locally in just a moment.
Red Carpet Car Wash in Carlsberg is always adding to the list of things they provide to keep your vehicle looking brand new. The full detail shop is just one more service to check off that list. Not only will your interior and exterior shine, your engine will sparkle too. Red Carpet is also getting some winter upgrades, including new equipment in the manual bay and new vacuums. Call Kyle today and let him get you scheduled for your red carpet treatment Tuesday through Saturday. 360-461-0826.
Hi, my name's Randy Johnson, and I'm running for re-election as your District 2 County Commissioner. As your County Commissioner, I have worked hard on many challenges our community faces. I will continue to address issues such as affordable housing, childcare, Veterans Affairs, and economic development. I am honored to have served you since 2017, and I ask for your vote for re-election as Clallam County Commissioner, District 2.
Paid for by the committee to elect Randy Johnson for County Commissioner.
Have you been searching and searching for anyone to install, repair, or replace your windows? What about looking for someone to install a new exterior door? And what about a skylight? Or a new glass shower enclosure? Or even a glass railing system? It can be hard, if not near impossible, to just get a call back. We at Hart & Nagel Building Supply sympathize with just how difficult it can be to get fast and dependable glass services. It's why we created our newest division, Hart & Nagel Glassworks. With over 80 years of combined experience, our team is ready and excited to help you on your next project. Whether it's big or small, residential or commercial, installation or repair, we can pretty much handle anything related to glass. Contact us today at 360-417-8388 or at hbsglassworks.com. Angelos Millwork and Hart & Nagel Building Supply, building homes, building community since 1906.
All right, welcome back to the program. It is always fun. Once a month, we talk with David Brownell. He is the executive director over at the North Olympic History Center, bringing in new topics and, old topics. I guess it's new topics about
new
old
takes
topics.
On it with
There
old
you
twist.
There you go. David's back because this is Archaeology Month, and we're going to talk a bit about that. And per usual, David's probably going to set this thing up in such a way that it is about the North Olympic Peninsula.
Yeah, I will actually start with a selfish North Olympic History Center plug. But for Archaeology Month, we're doing a couple things. One is that we've got a free online introduction to Pacific Northwest archaeology with local retired archaeologist Gary Wesson, who actually lives over in Port Townsend and worked out here doing archaeological field work for over 50 years. So he's got a
Wow.
depth of experience that's just astonishing.
Pun intended.
Yep, yeah. Exactly. So he's worked in coastal and lowland forest all around western Washington. He actually received the 2020 DAP, Department of Archaeology and Historic Preservation Award for career achievement. So Gary's been very generous in donating his time and knowledge. And we actually started last week, so we'll be, as of this Thursday, that'll be the 4th session. But I want to let people to know who aren't aware that this is going on, and that you can totally log in halfway through, and you're still going to learn a great deal about the archaeology of specifically the Olympic Peninsula. So this Thursday, we're going to be talking about late Pleistocene archaeology. So last week was sort of setting, general introduction, talking about climate and environmental changes and how that sort of shaped archaeological cultures out here. And now we're sort of starting to focus on specific time periods. And so again, Pleistocene is going back, to the last ice age. So we're going pretty far back. And I think, to me, on a personal level, that's one of the most fascinating things about living on the North Olympic Peninsula is we have this depth of archaeological research here. Sites going back to the Manus Mastodon site, almost 14,000 years old. And then, the tribes are still here, still living, their cultures. And so we've got kind of a cultural continuum that literally stretches from the end of the last ice age up to the present. The one other real quick plug that I'll put in is this Saturday, I'm giving a presentation at the Jamestown Tribal Library down in Blinn on the archaeology of the Sequim Prairies. So taking, kind of a lot of the stuff that Gary's talking about and really focusing in just on kind of the area around the Sequim Dungeness Valley. And I will say, even if folks can't make it to that presentation, again, at 2 p.m. on Saturday, if they haven't been in the new tribal library down there, it's world class. We got a grant 5 or 6 years ago, an IMLS grant, to build a little exhibit hall into the back of the library. And that's kind of, where the museum field is going as a whole. Now as there's more digital resources and there's a lot more technology giving you the ability to do a lot more in a smaller space. You can use a space like what's at the tribal library where it's, I'm off the top of my head, I want to say roughly like 40 by 15 feet. So not a big room, but you can tell 15,000 years of history and you can see a lot of the artifacts, from these different sites out on exhibit. So highly recommend checking that out. So for folks who don't know, the Manus Mastodon site is a mastodon kill site that's up in Happy Valley. So it's south of Sequim, kind of up in the foothills of the Olympic Mountains. We think when the mastodon was originally killed, it was kind of on the edge of a pond or a boggy area. And this is going to be a repetitive theme through some of the things that I'm going to talk about for the next few minutes is to boil things down. We have very acidic soils in Western Washington, so they don't really preserve archaeological materials with the exception of stone tools very well. But we have a handful of sites here on the Olympic Peninsula where, for example, like the Manus Mastodon site, this mastodon was killed on the edge of a boggy area. So most of the mammoth remains ended up inundated underwater. They were in an anaerobic or oxygen-free environment that actually preserved the bones and organic materials.
Hi, this
so we
is
can
Bill
actually
Benedict.
get radiocarbon dates. Another really cool thing we have the Manus Mastodon site is a pollen record that goes back 14th. So basically we know what plants were on the landscape going back to the end of the last ice age. And what's really cool about that to me as somebody who lives in Sequim is 14,000 years ago, we had the Sequim prickly pear cactus. 14,000 years ago, we had soapberry, Shepherdea canadensis. These are plants that are still on the Sequim landscape. They're not doing as well as they were doing historically, but there's more and more efforts now, working with the Land Trust, Olympic Peninsula Prairie, some other nonprofits, trying to do work to start getting some prairie restoration projects and just making sure that these plants are going to be on our landscape in the future. It's really important work. For folks who are interested in seeing the Manus Mastodon and learning more about that site, they can go to the Sequim Museum, which is in downtown Sequim. Highly recommend it. And one of the interesting things about the Manus Mastodon is it's got this bone point in its ribs. And so for a long time, there's a lot of controversy. Is it a bone point? Did the mastodon get in a fight with a deer? What exactly happened?
Right.
But there's a lot more evidence when you look at the site as a whole. There's things about the Manus Mastodon. Parts of the upper body, limbs were removed and taken to a higher basically, they didn't want to butcher the mastodon in the pond. So they cut parts of the body up and carried it to a higher elevation. The cranium itself, the skull case, was actually rotated 180 degrees and broken open to harvest the brain matter, which is very calorie-rich food that Paleolithic humans used to take advantage of. And another really cool thing about that site was, when the archaeologist, so it's named after Emmanuel Manus, he was actually out digging a duck pond in his backyard and found some tusks, and right on the guy immediately called an archaeologist and said, we've got to figure out what's going on here. And the archaeologist looked around the site, and you've got this mastodon kind of on the edge of this boggy area, and right next to it, you've got this little rise or a knoll. I wouldn't even call it a hill, but an area that's up above the wet area. And so, from an archaeological perspective, it makes a lot of sense. Well, let's take a look at what's going on there, because if there were people here, that's where they would be camping on the edge of the pond.
Right.
And they actually found a sequence of, I want to say around 5 or 6 hearths, basically campfires, indicating, this camp had been repeatedly used. And they also found faunal remains, which are animal bones, of many animals that are no longer on this landscape. You've got bison antiquus, which is the American bison's ancestor that was twice the size of today's bison. So if you've ever seen one of those in person, imagine.
And so these are roaming around
These
here.
are roaming around the landscape. And it's worth noting at that time, the landscape was very, very different. So this is, the Manus Mastodon going back 14,000 years ago. This is when there's probably still ice on parts of our landscape. The last glacial maximum, there were almost 4,000 feet of ice stacked up over the Salish Sea and pushing onto the north coast of the Olympic Peninsula. As that ice started to melt and we got into the end of the last ice age, most of the area would have kind of been similar to tundra, scrub environment, maybe a few scrubby trees on the landscape. Then we entered a period about 10,000 years ago, from 10,000 years before present up to about 8,000 years before present, where the climate got much warmer and drier. And so at that point, Western Washington looked a lot like what Eastern Washington does today. Open, park-like landscape, Douglas firs, maybe, fire-adapted trees, lots of Gary oaks at that time. And because it was this big open landscape, you had lots of large terrestrial herbivores like the bison antiquus.
Yep.
We had caribou that we found at the Manus Mastodon site. So you can think of how different it would have looked at that time. And so one of the important stories about archaeology on the Olympic Peninsula is how climate and geography both play into where humans are and what they're doing on the landscape. And so again, if you go back 10,000 years ago, there weren't huge forests covering Western Washington. That starts about 6,000 to 7,000 years before present. The climate shifts again. It starts to get cooler. It starts to get wetter. And by about 3,500, 4,000 years before present, the conifer forests close in over Western Washington. Which really reduces the landscape's carrying capacity for large herbivores. I mean, there's not a lot of grass for them to eat. And so that's when you really see kind of the range of animals in the Olympic Peninsula start to be kind of boiled down to what we have now, which is mainly the cervids, elk, and black-tailed deer, the large herbivores. We've got black bears, mountain lions, bobcats. Gray wolves are the other one. Gray wolves actually survived up until like the 1950s, 1960s is when the last gray wolves were exterminated on the peninsula. And they'll probably be back in a few decades. They're expanding their range again. Coyotes are not native to the Olympic Peninsula. We do not find coyote remains in archaeological sites. They showed up after gray wolves were wiped out. So in our own lifetimes, sort of seeing how these factors sort of play into what's on the landscape is really interesting. And so in that time period, we have another site in Sequim called the Sequim Bypass Site, which folks who have been around will remember when the highway bypass went in the mid to late 90s in Sequim, basically where Highway 101 and the Sequim Avenue interchanges is one of the largest archaeological sites in Western Washington. Because the highway had to go through there, Department of Transportation funded an archaeological dig that basically excavated a certain percentage of that site to get as much data as possible. All of those artifacts are curated by the Jamestown Slalom tribe, and many of them are on display in the tribal library. The older component of that site is a hunting camp that goes back to that warmer period. But what's really cool is then the more recent component, we actually have radiocarbon dates, goes back to about 3,000 years, 2,700 years before present, up to about 170 years ago. And it doesn't take a lot of, critical thinking to realize what happened 170 years ago that brought those cultural traditions that literally go back to the last ice age to a halt. You start having agricultural development of the prairie lands because when the first non-natives agriculturalist arrived here, it was much easier to build a farm out on open prairie land than start cutting timber and clearing these huge stumps.
Go where it's easy.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So we've got the Sequim Bypass site, and that's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about this Saturday at the Tribal Library. Is that site, a couple of the villages that were kind of on the periphery of the Sequim Prairie. Here in Port Angeles, pretty well known as the Chewitson Village site, which again goes back to about roughly 3,000 years before present. And that's kind of indicative of what you'll see around coastal sites around the Olympic Peninsula. And again, talking about environmental factors, sea level has changed drastically since the last ice age. And I'm talking 14,000 years before. That sounds like a long time to us, but in the broader perspective of human history and geological history, that's a snap of the fingers. I mean, this is very quick. And so when you think about the landscape during the last glacial maximum with 3/4 of a mile of ice sitting on top, it's an immense amount of weight that's almost impossible for our human brains to just a number with a billion zeros after it in terms of tons. It actually is heavy enough to depress the crust of the earth. So it pushes the tectonic plates down. And once that ice is gone, those tectonic plates start to rise up again. It's called isostatic rebound. And so here on the Olympic Peninsula, that isostatic rebound happened at different rates in different places. And then you actually have the geological processes that are forming the Olympic Peninsula itself, which, not getting into the weeds on that, but essentially the Olympic Peninsula is a tectonic plate that's being smushed up against the west coast of North America, which is why the Olympic mountains are slowly rising. And they're marine sediments. They've been pushed from the bottom of the ocean up, 5, 6, 7,000 feet. These different processes affect how much sea level rise we've had in different areas on the Olympic Peninsula. And so, just to give you an example, if you go out and hike out at Shai Shai Beach on the West End, when you get out to the beach, the trail comes out to the top of a bluff. And then you've got to do kind of a little switchback trail that actually takes you down to the ocean level beach. The top of that bluff was the beach a couple thousand years ago. And the west end of the peninsula is slowly lifting up out of the ocean. So older sites would actually be farther inland, covered with trees. And again, this is why we don't have a lot of sites inland on the Olympic Peninsula. It's really hard to find archaeological sites when you've got it covered in deep, dense conifer forest. You can't see the ground. It's all pine needles. Similarly, on the east end of the county, Squim Bay, we have an archaeological site in the kind of roughly the area of John Wayne Marina that we've radiocarbon dated to, I believe it's about 400 years before present, that's actually below the tide line. So the theory is that there was some other sort of localized subsidence event that actually sunk that little corner of Squim Bay.
And then brought it back up again. Right?
No, it stayed down. And so what's interesting about that is then we start seeing around that same exact time is when we get our first radiocarbon dates of the Chiquing Village site, which was around Washington Harbor. So essentially, it makes sense. There was some sort of an earthquake, some sort of a subsidence event. The village got inundated, so they picked up and moved the village about a half mile down the bay to a beach that was above the tide line. So just, and again, that's 400 years ago.
Not very long ago,
that's
really,
not very long ago. So thinking about in terms of, how many homes we have in the near shore or along the shoreline now, and sort of thinking towards the potential of not the potential, we're going to have a Cascadia rising earthquake again.
And what that might do to those areas, because this may be what did it to that.
Exactly. Right, and so that to me is part of the value of archaeology and learning from this stuff is many of the things that we will face in the future as humans are things that have happened many times in the past. And so it sort of behooves us to study those events and see how they affected human behavior. The forest closing in, the sea level shifting, all of that plays into where humans live on the landscape. And we see that more broadly in the region. When the forests close in about 4,000 years ago is when we see a shift to what we now perceive as the prototypical Pacific Northwest tribal culture, which is, building big longhouses, carving canoes, a very marine resource centric lifestyle, hunting marine mammals, fishing for salmon, digging shellfish. All of those things really pick up and take off around 4,000 years ago. The other thing about that shift, that's when Western red cedar first starts to proliferate across the landscape. There is red cedar in the pollen record going back 10,000 years, but just a very, very small amount, mainly because it was too dry. Even at the end of the last ice age, it was much colder, but it was also much drier than it is now. And so now, as we are entering another period of shifting climate, the science is very clear that things are starting to get warmer and starting to get drier. Understanding what happened in the past is going to help us understand what's coming in the future, and the need to have Gary oaks on the landscape and the need to have a biodiverse landscape with plants that are adapted to these warmer, drier climates. Because what we're going to see, and we're already seeing it in many parts of Western Washington, and you can see it driving up and down Highway 101 on the Olympic Peninsula, is a lot of Western red cedars that are growing in the uplands are dying. I mean, if you drive down the highway and look at the tops of red cedars, they're not doing well, with the exception of in riparian corridors down in the little valleys where there's creeks and rivers, and they can keep the roots wet. And so what we're going to see is the range of Western red cedars reduced from basically throughout the forest to really just those riparian corridors and areas where you've got wetter soils. So on the note of weather, in the village, in that on today's shoreline, a lot of other places that older shoreline is actually out underwater.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't find that. Moving out west a little bit to the Hoko River, there's a site called the Hoko Wet Site, which is another archaeological site that was basically inundated underwater next to the Hoko River, where they've done excavations where they found woven basket fragments. They were able to basically reconstruct what these baskets looked like and what techniques they were using to weave the baskets, as well as these really cool, a lot of archaeological sites, we find really cool stone tools, but we don't really know exactly what they're used for because we don't really have any of the other elements that were part of that tool. At the Hoko River site, we found all of these, they're called quartz microblades, which you take a quartz crystal and you smash that with a rock and it turns into all these tiny razor sharp blades of a toothpick, and you can use that. They did what's called experimental archaeology, which is you remake the tool and then you try a bunch of different things to see what it's good at. It's great for filleting flatfish like flounders, halibut, that sort of thing,
which
makes total sense.
Yeah, right.
One other site farther out is the Ozette site, which was a village out on the southwest tip of the Macaw Reservation out on the Pacific coast. Was a village occupied until probably late 1800s, early 1900s, so until relatively recently. That village was actually, part of the village was covered by a landslide a couple hundred years ago. And again, many of those organic materials, they got covered with earth, wet earth, and it basically preserved them. So you had great preservation of bone, wood, even hair, and other, usually biological materials that degrade very quick. Right. And so a lot of those are on display now out at the Macaw Cultural and Research Center. And so any listeners who have never been there before, it is a world-class museum that every time I go, I'm so fast. I could lose days in that museum. They're gonna they have to shuffle me out the door at the end of the day. But it's just the workmanship, and I mean the preservation of those materials is so good that a lot of them look like somebody made them a few weeks ago, which is relatively rare in this corner of the world to be able to see things like that in person. So highly recommend checking that out.
All right. Spoken like a true archaeologist at heart. David, it's always great to have you in and just give us a little highlight. This really is a gem of a place for archaeological stuff.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't quite realize that.
It's a very cool place to live.
Start talking to people that are in that science and they go, oh, really? Up there? There's some stuff to see. Right?
Yep. And there's places you can go see it in person, too.
Exactly.
Yep.
Right on. As always, you can head over to the History Center site and get a lot of tips on what's going on, too.
Yep, NorthOlympicHistory.org. You can find information on the archaeology class we're doing and links to the registration page and all that good stuff.
All right, David, great to have you. Thanks for stopping by. We'll do it again next month, all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're going to take a break. Be back with more right after this.
This is the Todd Ortloff Show on News Radio KONP.
October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and that means there's no better time than now to educate yourself on preventing, finding, and treating breast cancer. Visit Olympic Medical Center's online health library to answer questions like, what should I know about mammograms? Does my family history put me at risk for breast cancer? And what questions should I ask my doctor? Find answers to these questions and more at olympicmedical.org/breastcancer.
Got an event? Make it special with live classic hits from Black Diamond Junction. The band voted best on the peninsula the past 7 years in a row.
We hired BDJ for our anniversary party. Their classic hits were so good and kept all generations of our guests dancing.
What a great band and the best entertainers. We had them for an event and won't hesitate to bring them back again. No question.
BDJ made our annual family and friends party the best ever. So professional and great to work with.
Get more info at blackdiamondjunction.com or Black Diamond Junction on Facebook and Instagram.
News, sports, and information for the North Olympic Peninsula. We're News Radio KONP, Port Angeles, Squim, a Radio Pacific station.
From ABC News,
I'm Lindsay Davis, anchor of Prime, streaming weeknights on ABC News Live. Emergency officials in Florida are telling residents on the state's west coast to complete any preparations ahead of Hurricane Milton before sundown tomorrow. The National Hurricane Center's Deputy Director Jamie Rome is urging people to abide by evacuation orders.
A lot of people seem to think they can outsmart these evacuation orders, or they can, they can figure out where the storm is going to go. Those evacuation decisions ordered by local officials are based off a whole myriad of hazards.
Meanwhile, the White House is calling out what it says is wrong and dangerous misinformation about Hurricane Helene, complicating relief efforts.